Hello and welcome to Pickleball Therapy, the podcast dedicated to your pickleball improvement. It's the podcast with you in mind. I am your host of this weekly podcast, Tony Roy. It's a pleasure to be with you for the podcast. You may hear a little bit of yipping in the background. Those are some new puppies that are part of our family now, and they're pretty active in the mornings while I'm recording this. So once in a while, you might hear a little bit of a background noise. That's that's either Benita or Olivia. Figuring out who's dominant over the other. There you go. This week's podcast, I want to talk about a different way of approaching distractions that arise when we play pickleball, and talk about a different way of framing that'll help you do it more constructively, right? Do something more productive and constructive with those things that we generally refer to as distractions when we play. I was reminded of it during we were at Nationals for a couple of weeks now in Arizona. We just got back a few days ago. And while we were there, we got to play some pickup games, and we had to deal with some adverse conditions, like, the way we were fortunate to have a court where we were staying, but the court was oriented where the sun in the morning and the sun in the evening basically were directly into your face. There was another day that we played, there was a lot of wind, and a couple of the players were, their shots were affected by the wind. And so it got me thinking about this idea of, when we play pickleball, we do have to face distractions. And sometimes those distractions are wind again, or the sun, could be the ball we're playing with, could be a number of, could be the noise levels around us, things like that. And so, when we face distractions, when we're, by definition, right, a distraction is something that pulls our attention away from the main thing that we're trying to focus on. Okay. So, if you're trying to, compose paint something, and somebody keeps tapping your paintbrush right on the end, hard to paint because you're distracted by it, right? It's a form of distraction, physical distraction. You could also have mental distraction, right? Where you're trying to focus on something around your house that you're working on, and you have a lot of other things on your mind, so you can't keep your mind on the thing that you're trying to work on. Same thing happens, obviously, when we play pickleball. We're out on the pickleball court, and we're trying to focus on the shot. We're trying to focus on ourselves and what we need to do better the next rally and things like that. But we're distracted by a number of things. And so, how do we deal with distractions in a way that is more productive for us, that is more constructive for us? And what occurs to me is that we should deal with those distractions, or approach those distractions, as just simply more pieces of the puzzle that we are working on. Think about a pickleball game rather than as some independent activity that we're trying to, or need to solve, right? Or need to win, or need to figure out, as just a puzzle, just like a crossword puzzle, or just a puzzle. And we are trying to just navigate the puzzle and solve it to the best of our ability. And frankly, the more complex the puzzle is, oftentimes the more satisfying it is to solve it. Imagine trying to let's go back to a puzzle. If you're working on a puzzle and it only has, 10 pieces to it, or even more basic, you could have one of those puzzles that, that toddlers use, that have like the wood pieces that there's like 8 of them, and they go into predetermined slots on a wood board. Pretty simple for most adults to do that, right? And not very rewarding when you complete it. Rewarding for the kid, sure, but not rewarding for the adult. Compare that to doing like a 1,000-piece puzzle. When you're done with that, it's kind of a pain sometimes, right? Because you're like, where does this go? And I can't figure out where this piece goes. But once you're done, it's a very rewarding experience because you overcame the complicated puzzle that was presented. When we think about pickleball as a puzzle, it allows us to take areas or situations that arise that are potentially distractions otherwise, things like the wind. I'm gonna sit on the wind for a minute, but things like the wind, and we look at those as pieces of a puzzle, or as complexities presented to us by this puzzle, and we're actually thankful that we have some condition that creates some more difficulty for us, raises the difficulty for us, because it challenges us some more, and it provides us with fodder, if you will, for the situation that we're having to solve. So let's sit on the wind for a little bit here. So when you have a windy day, right, the wind's swirling. So the wind may be behind you, and then it's in front of you, and then it's coming from the side. That's awesome, because now you need to adjust your core positioning, the amount of energy you enter into, and the amount of energy you put into the shot based on the wind conditions. So the wind's in your face, and you're returning serve, you're going to have to take a step back because the ball's going to go deeper, and you're going to have to deliver more energy into the ball to get your ball to go deep, your shot to go deep. If the wind swirls around and now it's behind you and you're returning serve, then you may have to take a step in, because now you expect the ball to be shorter on its trajectory towards you, and then you need to make sure that you deliver less energy into your shot to make sure your ball doesn't go out. So that's an example of how one additional factor like wind creates more puzzle for you to solve, and also makes the shot itself more complex. One of the players who was playing with us this week had difficulty with balls that bounced and then came into the body. And so what does that do? That just creates another challenge, right? It's just another hurdle that we have to overcome, which is we need to stay light on our feet before we get set and hit the shot. In other words, we need to be ready to move as the wind moves the ball after it bounces. And between the time it bounces and the time we have to hit it, we need to stay more focused on the shot. So it's just another challenge for us. And I think what that does is it allows us to shift our perspective away from, something like, which, you hear players say this, I don't like playing in the wind, or I don't like playing in X, right? Whatever it is. Rather than that, you look at it and you say, you know what? This is an interesting challenge for me. Maybe this is something that I'm not comfortable doing, right? It's more difficult for me. It's like they added it, instead of being 1,000 pieces, now it's 1,200 pieces, so it's more complex. But that's cool, right? That's nice, because it makes it it increases the challenge that I face, and it makes the game that I'm playing more interesting. And so this idea of solving a puzzle and looking at these challenges and potential distractions as pieces of the puzzle will help you generate more challenge for yourself, but also create more, more. It's more rewarding, right? Because you get to work through those as you play. And you can take the same concept of the puzzle and you can extend it out even to things like, playing tricky players, playing players who shots you don't know where they're going to go, right? Unpredictable players. Playing, let's say next rotation, you have a lobber on the court. That's just a different puzzle for you to solve, right? Instead of being like something that you don't like doing, something that you maybe just try to get the word that you you look across, you're like, oh no, not a lobber, right? That's just not what I want. Instead of looking at it that way, say, okay, a lobber, great. Now that's another piece of the puzzle. What can I do to make my life as easy as possible when I face a lobber? You can do the same when you're facing a banger. You can do the same thing when you're facing a really good dinker, a really good third shotter. And all of these pieces are just all of these elements that you're facing, right? Whether they be distractions, such as wind, sun, things like that, or challenging opponents or challenging situations for you, are nothing other than pieces of a puzzle or aspects of a puzzle. And the more complex the puzzle is, the more challenging the game that you are playing is going to be for you. And at the end of the day, is that not why we play pickleball? Do we not play pickleball, at least in part, because of the challenge that it presents to us? If it was easy, then you'd probably grow bored with it. I always pick on cornhole, and again, no problem with cornhole itself, but cornhole is a static event where it's just the bean bags are always the same weight. The holes themselves the boards are only are always a set distance away. You always toss from the same kind of place, things like that. So it gets a little bit rote, doesn't it? As pickleball, what conditions are you going to play in today? I don't know. What's the humidity level? I live in Florida, and Florida, the humidity level will affect how the ball flies. CJ lives up in Lake Tahoe, And in Lake Tahoe, the balls there fly much farther. So, the altitude, humidity, wind conditions, sun conditions, types of opponents you're playing, all those different things go into this mix, and they create, at the end of the day, the puzzle that is the challenge of the game that you're going to currently play when you're playing pickleball. And for yourself, removing the power that a potential distraction or a potentially challenging situation presents to you is helpful to you in terms of your growth as a human, because you have that power. No, you have the ability to, the agency, as we always say in here, the agency to not allow just objective things like wind or lobbing or whatever to impact you negatively. Instead, you make it a challenge. You make it a puzzle. You make it just something that you're going to do your best to solve during the game, understanding how it impacts the solving of that game, the carrying out of that game. And then you work on yourself, and you work on not just working on solving the puzzle, working on how you perceive the input, how you perceive the wind or the condition that generally bothers you, noise and things like that. And you turn that around to a growth experience for yourself in terms of solving a puzzle. So hopefully that helps you next time you're facing a potential distraction, or what you currently call a distraction, as opposed to thinking about it more positively as a challenge to you as you continue to solve pickleball puzzles every time that you go out there and play pickleball. If you have a minute, consider rating and reviewing the podcast. And as always, share with your friends. Remember, if you enjoyed the podcast, they probably will too. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you at the next episode of Pickleball Therapy. Be well.